G'day mate, how you going? Yeah, not bad, how you going? Yeah, not bad, what are you up to? I'm just trying to get a signal. Oh mate, you should have bought yourself a mobile phone signal booster. If this has happened to you, stay tuned, I'll show you how to solve this problem. G'day folks, welcome to another Forex Adventures video, and welcome once again to my workshop. Yes, it's a bit of a mess, but hey, it's a workshop. Okay, so today I'm going to talk to you about a new toy that I have. And this toy is called Cel-Fi Go. Now, Cel-Fi Go is a mobile phone, or cell phone for you Americans, a mobile phone signal booster. Now, this is going to be a really great addition to the four-wheel drive. I've recently come back from a trip where I didn't have any reception in the area I was, and occasionally I would get one tiny little bar of reception, but that would be 3G, and it would drop out as soon as I tried to use the internet. I had a need to make a booking ahead of time, and I just couldn't do it. It took me hours and hours and hours of trying to stand on top of the car, waving the mobile phone around, trying to get some signal, and it always dropping out. So the perfect solution to that problem is this product, Cel-Fi Go. So the way it works is it needs some kind of signal to latch onto. It will then boost that signal by up to 100 dB. Now, if there's no signal at all, it won't do anything. But if you have even the smallest little signal, it'll boost it. And you will get several bars of 3G or even up to 4G coverage in remote areas, depending on, of course, where you are. But it will, if there's a tiny bit of a signal, it'll boost it and you'll have mobile phone coverage. So you can make a phone call or get on the internet and check the weather report or make a booking ahead of time or do whatever you need to do. So without further ado, let's have a look at the unit, and then we're going to install it in the four-wheel drive, and lastly we're going to actually go out, find a remote area and test how well it works. So let's get to it. Okay, so what we have here is we have the main unit itself. So we'll open it up, and this is the Cel-Fi booster. So I'll show you on this camera. This is the Cel-Fi booster. It has two antenna sockets. One is for the internal antenna and one is for the external antenna. And you have power, and that's it. So this is waterproof. It's IP95 rated, so it's weather resistant. And you just plug it into your cigarette lighter or some kind of 12-volt source on the vehicle and connect the two antennas to it, install some software on your mobile phone, and away you go. So what the unit comes with, obviously that's the brains of the unit. It comes with a little coax adapter. It comes with a isopropyl alcohol cleaner, and that is used for cleaning the glass so that you can stick the internal antenna on the glass somewhere, and there's about 5 meters of cable. It also comes with a power cable. Now, the power cable is about 5 meters long, which is great, but what I don't like about these sorts of power cables is it comes with a cigarette lighter adapter. I'll show you in this camera, cigarette lighter adapter. The problem with these is when you're going over corrugations, they just very easily rattle out of the socket. So I've chopped it off and I've installed an Anderson plug. Anderson plugs are great because they click into another Anderson plug of the same type, and they are solid. They're not going to come apart. So this is our power cable, and I've already opened this before, and I've measured the distance from my power source to where I'm going to mount this in the car, and I only need a short amount of power cable. I don't need 5 meters of it. So I've cut the power cable down, installed an Anderson plug, and the last thing that it comes with is an antenna. Now, there are actually 3 different antennas available for this unit, and when I purchased this, I had a good long chat to the guy in the store, and he was telling me that the antennas are all identical in terms of performance. So the only difference between the various antennas is there was one where the antenna was one unit, one where the antenna was detachable from the base, and that's the one that I bought. And there was another one which was a huge, big, almost twice as long, big chunky antenna, and that was also detachable. But in terms of performance, all of the antennas perform exactly the same. They are all 6.5 dBi antennas. I've gone for the detachable one, and this is the unit. What I like to do is lay it out and connect all the wires up and just get an idea of how much wire I have and how it all works. So let's go do that now. So these are all the various bits and pieces, and this is how it all goes together. We have an internal antenna, an external antenna, and power. So, before we install it in the car, I'm going to replace the cigarette lighter adapter with a much more reliable Anderson plug. Anderson plugs come with two terminals that need to be crimped onto the ends of the wires. Before we cut the cable, we need to make sure there's no electronics built into the cigarette lighter adapter itself. It's common for manufacturers to build a voltage regulator into the adapter, so we're just going to open it up and have a look. We'll start by unscrewing the tip and removing the fuse. And by the way, this is a 2 amp fuse, so we'll need to know that for later on. Then we just unscrewed and open it up and have a look inside and make sure that there's no extra electronics, and there isn't. Next step is to cut this off. Never cut it off at the end because that will render this useless. Always give yourself some slack because that way you can attach this to something else. I now cut the wire to length and then split the wire and separate the pairs. I then use a pair of wire strippers to strip the ends of the wires off, give them a bit of a twist. I've actually made them a little bit longer than they need to be so that I can fold them back on themselves, and they are just the right length for the terminals. It's time to verify which wire is negative and positive. The outside terminals on the cigarette lighter are always negative, so we're going to insert a multimeter set to continuity and test each wire until we hear a signal. Okay, so that one, the bottom one here, that one's negative. So if we have a look at the cable, we can see that the negative cable has some white writing on it. This is a technique known as puddle soldering. It basically involves filling the terminal with solder. So we'll fill it all the way up. It might take a while, but we fill it all the way up with solder, and then we make sure that the solder is molten, and then we insert the wire and wait for it to solidify, which only takes a few seconds. Now what we've ended up with is our terminals nicely soldered onto the ends of the cable. And now we put some heat shrink onto the ends of the cables. Now we know that the cable with the white writing is the cable that is negative, so we put black heat shrink for negative and red heat shrink for positive. And we just slide those over the end and then use a heat gun to shrink the heat shrink tubing. And now the final step is actually plugging these into our Anderson plug. So the way that they go, you can see, I'll show you on this camera once again, you can see that the bottom side is flat and the top side has a little lip or a ridge on there. So that goes face up. Negative goes into the negative side. This is our Anderson plug. So we push the negative side in and you can see that it goes part of the way in. Do the same thing with the positive. Make sure that we get the flat side facing down and put the positive side in. And when you push it in, halfway in it clicks into place. You can see these little tongues in there. Now we have to keep on pushing these further in until it makes a good solid click and goes up to the very tip of the connector. So there you go. You can see that that's just gone through to the tip. And do the same thing for the other side. There you go. So now we've got our cigarette light adapter. swapped for a proper Anderson plug. The next step is to go and install the unit in the car. Okay, so the unit comes with three main components: the Cel-Fi booster itself, the internal antenna, and the external antenna. Here's the external antenna. This is a 6.5 dBi antenna. It's mounted on a flexible mount, and the antenna is removable from the base of it. Now, if you're going to remove the antenna, it's important that you turn the Cel-Fi unit off. Now, the recommended installation location for these antennas is on a flat piece of metal, for example, near your bonnet or on the roof. I originally tried to mount the antenna on the roof, but the cable that it comes with is only 4 meters long, and that wasn't long enough for me to have the antenna mounted on the roof, going all the way down to the top, to the front corner of the tent, and then all the way back to the back of the car. It just wasn't long enough. So I ended up mounting the antenna on the front, and then I ran the cable through the firewall, down along the floor and up to the back of the vehicle where I've got the Cel-Fi unit mounted. So let's go have a look at that now. Alright, so now we get to the Cel-Fi unit. Now, this is very easy. You just find a spare bit of space in your car and bolt it to the wall. And that's what I've done here. I have found a spare bit of space on my board there. I've bolted the Cel-Fi unit to it, and I've made sure that I've got some spaces between the Cel-Fi unit and the board itself. I'm just using M12 nylon nuts as spaces. But that gives me about 0.5 centimetre of space. I've also got a switch to allow me to turn the power off to the unit, and that is very important because if you're going to remove the antenna, then you need to turn the unit off. The unit uses about 0.5 amp, which is not a lot of power, but you might not want to have it running all the time. So once again, the switch is handy. Just turn it off when you don't need it. The unit comes with a 2 amp fuse, and I've also added a fuse in there. I'm using a 5 amp fuse at the moment. I might swap that to a 2 amp later on. Okay, so the final thing left is the internal antenna. So I've got the internal antenna mounted on the opposite side of the vehicle, diagonally from where the front antenna is located, as far away physically as I can get it from the front antenna. I also have this cargo barrier in between the front antenna and the back antenna. In fact, the more metal you can get between the front and back antenna, the more isolated they become. And that is very, very important to make the antennas completely isolated from each other as much as possible for the best performance. Now let's go and do some testing. Okay, so we're just driving around on this property. This is private property, by the way. We're just driving around trying to find a spot with minimal reception. Now, if we have no reception at all, the Cel-Fi booster won't do anything. But if you have tiniest bit of reception, it should latch onto that signal and boost it by up to 100 dBi. So let's see if we can find a good spot to test. Okay, so we've found a spot with 3G of coverage. I've got 3G 1 bar, and I'll show you the screen. And now let's go turn the unit on, and we'll see if that improves. So let's do that now. Okay, so the unit takes about 30 seconds to boot up, and then we start our app. It's called X-Wave, and we need to wait for it to finish booting up. There we go. So you'll see down the bottom of the screen it has a couple of meters showing you the signal strength of 3G, 4G and the boost. Boost is 100%, and you can see here that it's chosen to use 4G rather than 3G. So it's actually communicating on the 4G network. And now we've got 4G 3 bars. So that is definitely working. So that's boosted it from 3G 1 bar to 4G 3 bars. So it definitely works. So I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. See you out there on the tracks.